That said, Russia organized a briefing in OPCW headquarters on the 26th of April for the member states of this organization, as well as a press conference for media. The main topic of this event was the discussion, the stage video footage of notorious white helmets about the alleged chemical attack in the Syrian city of Duma. The Syrians who unfortunately and unwillingly became the actors of this play participated at the briefing, among them children and little Hassan Diab, accompanied by his father, as well as the medical workers of the hospital where this video was actually shot. The sincerity and the precise nature of their evidence and of their testament could not possibly leave any doubts. However, as it sometimes happens in the modern world, those distorted mirrors present information differently. At least some people do all they can in order to distort the true facts. Probably some of you have already seen it, but I'm not sure that you have kept track on it the same way as we did. I'd like to present some parts of this press conference in order to leave no doubts about the staged nature of some separate fake videos, but about the staged nature of this whole company, which engaged non-governmental organizations that were financed by foreign governments, that engaged journalists and that engaged foreign diplomats. I'd like to present several questions that your colleagues, the Western journalists, asked the Syrians who came to The Hague in order to give the true information about what they had survived and to answer all the questions possible. Please look at the screens. Rupert Evelyn from British TV company ITV, he asked how much money the participants of the Syrian briefing received in order to change their testaments for the benefit of the Russian position, and what were they threatened with. If you think that it was differently, have a look at the screen.
How threatened do you have to feel to change your story and deny how low do you have to go to bring that child all the way here and threaten them?
На что вы пошли, чтобы привести и запугать маленького мальчика сюда?
Just have a look. It's not a question. The journalists had an opportunity to ask any question they liked. Where were you at the moment of the attack? What did you feel? Did your eyes ache? Where did you go? With whom did you talk? How were you discovered? What was your way to The Hague like? Any question you like. Is it your first trip abroad? They could ask just anything, but this question was not a question, it was an accusation. How much money did you get? And what were you threatened with? But it was not the only question. That actually puzzled me. BBC representatives. Have a look at the screen, please.
По поводу маленького Хасана. Учитывая его возраст, он, конечно, очень маленький. Как вы пришли к выводу, что он сможет справиться с международными СМИ, как он сможет преодолеть эту травму? И, во-вторых, все сирийцы, которые присутствуют здесь, вернутся ли они в Сирию прямо сейчас?
Как маленькому мальчику вы об этом задумывались, спрашивает журналистка BBC, насколько я понимаю.
The BBC journalist, as far as I understand, Anna Holigan, asked, How is the little boy supposed to overcome the trauma inflicted by the global media? However, at the same time, this child was brought here from the country that has been suffering from domestic military affairs for many years. And these military affairs were assisted by the foreign actors. And at the same time, the journalists call what he has survived as a psychological trauma. I've heard some speculations that Syrians had to be prepared, but they didn't have to be prepared, actually, because they have suffered a lot and they stood absolutely ready for a frank conversation. The questions that they received could leave possibly no doubt that this was a part of a threatening campaign that the British journalists had just talked about. And it was a part of a campaign to blame the people who were actually intending to give frank information about what they had survived. Unfortunately, this is the case where a journalist becomes a propaganda tool. If we talk about propaganda, and the propaganda that can kill, that's what it is. Those were not the representatives of state bodies. Those were just journalists who are supposed to be independent and who received a unique opportunity to talk to the witnesses. Nobody prepared Syrians. They were available for interview. They were prepared to answer any possible questions. The whole footage of this briefing is posted to our official website. There is no doubt that this was a connection of journalists and foreign diplomats. As this conference was being prepared, the foreign diplomats did all they could in order to ruin this event. They pressurized OPCW Secretariat, they phone-called member states and tried to urge them not to come, but more than 15 member states participated, and a group of about 17 states ignored this briefing. After that, they made an official statement about their motives. So this was a group play, and we have evidence of this. We have evidence that foreign diplomats worked together with the independent journalists of their countries. I would like to pay your attention to the fact that after those events, our Western colleagues found an opportunity to call this briefing a dirty masquerade and a harsh propaganda exercise. That's a good comparison, isn't it? The witnesses who came from Syria apparently cannot be compared to the people whom our Western colleagues bring to UN, to UN Security Council, whom they make pictures of and whom they present to some Western TV channels. Just take Samantha Power, who brought many people to the United Nations, and it would be naive to think that our Western partners have nothing to do with the fact that in October 2017, Banoy Alabet, the famous girl, visited UN headquarters, taking into account the PR company that she received from the Western media. Now, let us talk about the heroes of this drama, about the White Helmet organization. We have talked about them a lot. Today we'll go into some details. Unfortunately, many media that engaged in anti-Russian campaign that was initiated by foreign governments found a hero for themselves, the so-called white helmets. What are they? In 2013, out of a number of Syrian volunteers, they, however, were established in Turkey by the former officer of British Special Services and security specialist, a man called Le Mesurier, a man who has a large record of working in humanitarian interventions of NATO countries, including Kosovo, Bosnia, Iraq, Lebanon. He has connections with notorious American facility Blackwater, an interesting man to stand behind the white helmets, isn't he? According to the data of the Institute of Senator Paul, the organization Syrian Civil Defense, this is the name behind the white helmets. This organization really exists. However, it was established 63 years ago. It is a member of the International Organization for Civil Defense, and it was recognized by the UN. It existed for more than 60 years until white helmets started to use this name. White Helmets is some humanitarian organization that, without any legal basis, has proclaimed itself as Syrian Civil Defense, and it said that it will deal with rescuing people in Syria. However, indeed, as a matter of fact, they emerge, they appear in the correct place at the correct time, always having a camera in their hands. And what they do is that, allegedly, they provide first aid to people who suffered from so-called chemical attacks. They do it using professional equipment. There was leakage of footage in the internet showing how they actually produced those videos. There was evidence that those footages were staged, that people whom they shot on camera had no idea of what they were participating in.
And now this organization has already been honored to receive a Nobel Prize for Peace and a prize for the true way of life. The film made by the White Helmets received an Oscar film as the best short film at the 89th ceremony. Well, we knew that the concepts that you see in the film, The Tail Wags the Dog, has never been given up, especially in the US, but we never could imagine that it has such a scale. There was time when in France, a delegation of White Helmets, led by Mr. Saleh, I'll speak about him a bit later too, got a very hearty welcome. Even a leader of state will be envious to receive such a welcome. Please pay attention to your screen. Do we have such photos? Yes, have a look at this slide, please. I'd like to underline that you can see what the pictures are illustrating. We got that wordings from the Western websites. Here are the names of the representatives and, of course, the motto of the Civil Syrian Defense. You can see what a nice reception they got in France. Unlike our Western colleagues that use absolutely cooked accusations, we would like to provide you with some proof. This proof was verified by independent experts and journalists, foreign experts and journalists, I mean. there were some serious doubts about the humanitarian nature of white helmets. Corey Morningstar, professor of Sydney University, Tim Anderson, the columnist Christina Lin, and other journalists doubted in their humanitarian nature. In Hamburg, a special event on gathering signatures in order to prohibit the white helmets from getting a Nobel Prize was instigated. Vanessa Hedney, a journalist who, unlike many other Western journalists, has spent several months at the territory of Syria. And together with her team, she studied the secret of the success of the so-called white helmet heroes that are referred to as heroes in the West. However, the facts she has gathered were so clear that she even referred to the organization that had decorated the organization for good lifestyle. She wanted to strip them from that prize because she discovered that white helmets is nothing but a support to the ISIL and the groups allied to them that were known for murdering a 12-year child, among other horrible crimes. Humanitarian representatives sometimes appear in the pictures with weapons in their hands. There are quite documentary pictures that illustrate them celebrating victory in the middle of terror groups. However, white helmets themselves say they are under no influence of any country. However, no one is ever under an influence of another person. However, it doesn't prohibit one from receiving money from them. The white helmets receive support from the US, Great Britain, the Netherlands, the countries that are, to put it mildly, interested in the harsh developments in Syria. There was a special foundation organized for buying heavy weaponry and equipment. However, one wouldn't specify exactly what equipment and weaponry was meant. The patterns and schemes of providing finance to the white helmets are most exquisite and comprehensive. They are rooted, the finance is rooted in Great Britain. For example, the Mayday Rescue Foundation that works, among other things, with the Syrian issues. Apart from that, there is another range of some evoking doubt, non-governmental organizations from the EU that also contribute to supporting the white helmets. Among other things, in the media space, the white helmets, as it is noted by a number of journalists, use the aid, resort to an aid that takes the form of a serious promotion along the lines of an organization that is sponsored by Mr. Soros. Well, the role of Mr. Soros in the Syrian crisis has been much discussed. Apart from that, media information support for all the PR services to the white helmets is provided by numerous British, US, American and Middle Eastern organizations. The renommee which is far from being pure and brilliant. In April 2016, the leader of the White Helmets, that Mr. Zakharova I've mentioned before, that once was so heartily welcomed by the President of France, was denied access to the US. You know, that person was denied access to the US. We've mentioned that, but now I'm trying to sum it up. Especially, again, the background when the white helmets have been repeatedly caught by hand, but not at that scale that we have witnessed a few weeks ago. So, in 2016, the head of the White Helmet Salik was denied access to the US because of his possible ties with the terrorists. In fact, it was explicitly noted by the previous speaker of the Department of State of the US during one of his press conferences. Whether there is a terrorist trace or not, it remains a question and a moot point, but the fact is there. In 2016, Mr. Salek was denied access to the US. According to the recent information, those under suspect at the Berlin airport was working for the White Helmets in Idlib. In fact, it's terrifying to imagine how many militants were richly financed by the West and how many of them are still being financed and hiding under the cover of the White Helmets. And today we received quite a fantastic piece of news. The State Department has stopped financing the White Helmets. And why then? Didn't they enjoy the last films? The previous films, or are there some other conditions to do that? I just want to know how much money the White Helmets received directly from the government of the US and from the governments of other states, among them those 3 countries that have delivered a blow at Syria recently. I believe it is a matter of principal importance in order to understand in what way this comprehensive fake-producing mechanism works. And one more point for the journalists that were so curious about the amount of money the Syrians could have gotten to come to The Hague. Or why wouldn't the journalists ask how much money the White Helmets get? This is exactly where the question lies. And frankly speaking, we do not know it for sure. It is somewhat a question for further journalist investigations. What was the reason of stopping the finance, and whether the stop was a final one or it will be restarted soon? That is only for the US to answer. But still, this issue is of major importance, a burning issue right now. I believe that we are free to say that from the point of media activities, the work of the White Helmets can be compared to a crime, and the repercussions of these crimes will be felt for a long time. And I firmly believe that there will be many times when we get them at telling lies. I'd also like to point out that the White Helmet project that was created to fuel the Syrian crisis, it is somewhat unique, speaking about the scale. Well, an Oscar Prize, that's something rare for such activities. However, there have been similar cases when fake videos, staged videos, were used in order to take important decisions within the international community. I'd like to remind you that, as you all know very well, there still are accusations against the participants of the alleged chemical attack that took place on the 7th of April in Duma. It was staged, it is clear. However, the campaign is not calming down. We have repeatedly stressed we do not call on taking it on trust. We call on all the stakeholders to conduct a thorough investigation using the mechanisms we have in the framework of the OPCV. However, the so-called pundits do not use any expert information. They prefer to base on the information of White Helmets instead. I'd like to remind you about a similar case. On the 6th of August 2017, the leadership of Georgia has accused Russia of delivering a missile strike at the vicinity of the city of Goya. And there was a video showed on the central TV of Georgia how President Saakashvili examines the parts of an allegedly unexploded missile on site. Being precise, this is a location in Tsiteluban. Based upon that videos, a so-called independent group of experts has made a statement accusing Russia while they were using most unworthy and unchecked information, untrustworthy information provided by the Saakashvili team. They rejected any contacts with Russian experts. At the time, that staged video was used as a pretext to exacerbate tensions. I believe you know the events attributed to that story. Today, similar activities, but in a greater scope, are carried out by the White Helmets at the territory of Syria. In 2017, to Georgia, a group of Russian experts were sent in order to conduct joint investigation. The evidence they have gathered has proven that the Saakashvili version was totally wrong. Cooperation, however, wasn't Saakashvili's priority. Haphazardly, the central part of the missile in question was destroyed by Saakashvili's team. The conclusion that were driven after by the international community clearly showed who, in what way, was conducting the aggression. That was Saakashvili. It was aggression of Saakashvili and his team against South Ossetia. I just want to hope that these tragic stories, which we have eyewitnessed, will never repeat themselves. However, in reality, we'll see quite the opposite.